Hi there, my name is Jeffrey Venture, and recently I got some friends together to playtest the Tales of Xadia tabletop role-playing game system. It's a system that strongly emphasizes narrative action, has a lot of opportunities for players to insert their characters' personalities into their characters' actions, and has a really interesting mechanical system to inform role-playing various forms of narrative stress. If you love the Dragon Prince show and are interested in immersing yourself even further into the magical and mysterious land of Xadia with a tabletop role-playing game, then you've come to the right place. I'll be giving you a brief summary of the mechanics of the game, as well as the experience me and my friends had while playing the Lost Oasis Adventure module that's included in the Tales of Xadia playtest material, as well as what we loved and what we found left something to be desired. Without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about the Dragon Prince Tales of Xadia role-playing game. As you could probably guess, we will be discussing the Lost Oasis playtest adventure in this video, so here's your spoiler warning if you want to play a Battle Mage, Sunfire Elf, or a Duranian Noble history buff in this adventure, and leave the game's narrator role to your forever DM. Tales of Xadia has a pretty simple summary for its core mechanics. Whenever you roll dice, you want to get a higher total than your opposition. This is the core principle of Tales of Xadia's Cortex game system. My first critique is that this should probably be included a little bit sooner than page 12 of the rules primer, but I digress. Like most tabletop role-playing games, we use the dice rolls to determine the outcome of an action that both has a narrative purpose and a reasonable chance of both success and failure, and in Tales of Xadia, we categorize these into tests, contests, and challenges. Tests are basic, non-contested actions. Contests are the same but against an active agent that opposes you, and challenges are usually a series of tests that cover multiple actions or actions that are time-consuming. All of these occasions for dice rolling call upon your attributes, the basic skill stats, values, which I was very happy to see getting mechanical usefulness in this game, and distinctions, which are informed by who you are, can be activated with a plot point, and are intended to evolve over time as you embrace your character more fully. All of your attributes, values, and distinctions carry a die rating equal to the number of sides for that die, D4, D6, D8, D10, and D12 respectively, and you select one attribute, value, and distinction to begin assembling your dice pool. You can then attempt to convince your narrator that the action that you are taking should benefit from one of your specialties or assets. And in the case of a contest, you can add one of your opposition's penalty dice, if they have one, to finish assembling your dice pool. With your dice pool assembled, you roll them all, set aside any ones rolled, pick 2 to count towards your score, and pick 1 as your effect die, the result of which is the size of the die rating and not the result rolled. Ones are called hitches and can be used by the narrator to cause narrative obstacles, but with your score and effect die selected, you compare it to the difficulty score of the test or the opposition's score in a contest, and if you beat it, you get to do what you wanted to do. The rest of the rules give a lot of detail for using plot points. Okay, last time I promise. And a few other details, including various forms of stress, which I want to give a bit of attention to during the What We Liked section of the video. But those are the basic mechanics you should know about before jumping into your first Tales of Xadia game. The Lost Oasis is a decently large adventure that I doubt you could finish in a typical 3 to 4 hour session, and that my group got just about halfway through in one such session. The module does a great job of establishing a couple of primary narrator characters, or NCs. Yeah, we're just going to keep calling them NPCs, Cortex. Sorry. One named Feathershaw, a gender-neutral Moonshadow elf in search of the Primal Well, who actually hired the adventurers and is bringing them to the soon-to-be crashing into a mountain floating city of Aenean, which Feathershaw claims to be abandoned. The adventurers pretty quickly find that the city is not in fact abandoned, and among the Skywing elves on the city of Aenean is Nosix, an older elf that has his own secrets and motivations for the players to discover. Upon arriving in the floating city of Aenean on a magic beam of moonlight, your first scene is supposed to be meeting a chicken named Wiggy. This is the point where I tell you that I went off script here for my adult cast of players and replaced Wiggy with a couple pairs of winged armor that barred their entry into the city. I'm sure the actual audience for this game and the show, children, would probably enjoy a scene with Wiggy, but I firmly believe in thrusting your players right into the action when running a one-off adventure. Alternately, my adult players would probably have enjoyed meeting Wiggy, but might not have gotten what the adventure module intended out of the interaction, which is to establish their players' personalities. The winged armor encounter had a likely but not 100% chance of combat the way that I designed it, but it did turn out to be combat for my players, which is where we actually spent a lot of the first session learning the dice rolling mechanics of the game. The rest of the adventure was mostly just role-playing, but I'll move it through pretty quickly. They then met the rest of the Skywing elves in the not-so-abandoned city. They then chose to talk to one of these elves. I elected to choose Olana, one of the minor NPCs included in the module, and they asked her some questions to get the truth of the matter, because they had completely lost faith in Feathershaw at this point. Then Nosix showed up, complained about the ne'er-do-well Feathershaw, and invited the party, minus Feathershaw, to the keep, while one of the party members kept tabs on the wandering Feathershaw. Nosix then confessed his terrible secret and showed them the skeletons in his closet, or rather the frozen magical coma elves. I got plenty enough from the first half of the adventure to make this video review, but we do fully intend to go back and finish saving the people of Aenean from the inevitable crash into the mountain, which I'll let you read about on your own. For 6 grown adults with experience playing tabletop RPGs, we found the rules to be a bit complicated to grasp, and thus doubted that the intended audience, children, would be able to pick them up quickly in a playtest like this, but overall, we still had a fun time. Everyone seemed to enjoy the opportunity to roleplay with the support of really solid RP-focused game mechanics. The most thunderous applause I can give to this system is for the stress mechanics. You can inflict or receive one of 6 types of stress: afraid, angry, corrupted, exhausted, injured, or insecure, as the result of failing a contest or sometimes a test, and these stresses are given a die rating based on their severity. Any character that exceeds the highest die rating, which is a D12, becomes stressed out and receives a significant hindrance, which can be anything from flying into an uncontrollable rage or collapsing to the ground. We love this mechanic because it's a fantastic way to represent the adversity that your character faces throughout the game, and a fantastic way to remind and reinforce players of how they roleplay the current situation that their characters find themselves in. I also found, though I didn't get specific feedback from my players, that plot points were a great addition to this system as well. Plot points are a great resource for players to use so they can take more control of the narrative and make their own luck by giving themselves in-game advantages that they get to narrate, within reason. And while we didn't get a chance to get really creative with plot points because there was a lot going on with learning the system, I think they've got a lot of potential as a storytelling mechanism. There's also plenty of other good things I could say about Tales of Xadia as a role-playing system, but I'm going to summarize by saying that it's a fantastic storytelling system that keeps the action moving quickly without getting too crunchy. I wouldn't be forthright without saying that my preference usually is actually a bit more on the crunchy side, but I enjoy a break from that every once in a while. This is a great system if you want a narrative-focused and quickly moving storytelling experience at your table that can get you from scene to scene a bit more quickly than other systems. My main gripe with the system is how the narrator, by the rules, is supposed to arrive at the difficulty for tests. Based on the difficulty of the test, the narrator is given 2 difficulty dice and 1 situational die, and is supposed to roll them and take the 2 highest to determine the difficulty that the player is supposed to beat. I think you can see this can make an easy test suddenly difficult if the narrator rolls high, and more importantly, a difficult test suddenly super easy if the narrator rolls low, which makes 0 sense to me. I chose to abandon the rolling part of determining test difficulty, and while I forgot to add a situational die to the pool, I instead elected to take averages for the 2 dice I was presented for various difficulty ratings and make the sum of those the difficulty setting for the roll. The only thing I might do differently in retrospect is take the average plus 1 for each die, because my players cleared almost all of my challenging level tests pretty easily. A minor but still important critique to consider for anyone thinking about running or learning the Tales of Xadia system is that the rules primer is not, in my opinion, laid out very intuitively. As mentioned, we don't get to see what is labeled as a core principle until page 12, and there's plenty of things covered before these rules about assembling a dice pool that I didn't have enough context to make sense of, like almost everything on the sample Rayla character sheet. Even the almost entirely dependent on having character building rules, which we don't have yet, section. A note about magical ability gets a mention before these dice rolling rules. And the last thing I'll say to hopefully give Cortex some helpful feedback is to take the cute, slightly fantastical animals that you have put in your setting and give them a reason to be there, other than to be scenery. I love the aforementioned Wiggy and Bibi the woolly pig, but they were ultimately just set pieces, and thus I chose not to include them at all. The Dragon Prince show is rife with adorable critters, and I think they need to make an appearance in Tales of Xadia to capture the show's essence. They don't have to go full Lassie with Timmy having fallen down the well, but they should provide some kind of narrative purpose. Otherwise, I think the diminishing returns on player interaction are going to kick in pretty quick. But yeah, so that's my review of Tales of Xadia, the Dragon Prince tabletop role-playing game system. I'm definitely a fan of this system after having played it, and will be picking up the full game whenever they launch it, but I hope that this provides my fellow gamers with some essential information before you go to your tabletop group and say, let's play Tales of Xadia, and some feedback to the Cortex team if you happen to be watching. I'd also invite you to subscribe if you like seeing your favorite TV shows, movies, and other popular media get turned into tabletop adventures, because this channel is the home of the D&D at Fight series, where we do exactly that. I've got a playlist link below that you should definitely check out if that kind of thing is up your alley. I also post homebrew TTRPG, but mostly D&D, content, memes, and other internet stuff, and all manner of updates for my live stream and other videos on my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you should definitely follow me if you want to catch all the content I'm putting out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy adventuring.